It's on. Great. Good morning, everyone. And it's so exciting to see so many people here this morning. I'm at the microphone only to introduce Celia Brown, our board president, and I invite you to stand while Celia has a message for us. So if you would, as you are able. Thank you, Celia.
I too am so excited. This is a great new beginning. I would be with you, but Richard has COVID and I'm getting over it. Representing the governing board and for all of us at First Parish, let's welcome Reverend Steve Wilson. Woo! We are delighted, Reverend Steve, that you are partnering with us at First Parish, Northboro. And as Steve's message is, title is Let's Have Our First Date. Reverend Steve, the pulpit is yours.
Well, thanks. I didn't intend on starting from looking down here on you all, but here we are. Our opening words come as a place of meeting. And if you want to join me at 7:33 in the hymnals, we'll do a good old fashioned. This is one of those pulpits you want to say like repent yon sinners from. You have the italicized part. Out of wood and stone, out of dreams and sacrifice, the people build a home. Out of the work of their hands and hearts and minds, the people fashion a symbol and a reality. May all who enter here trust one another so surely that they dare to share the deep fires that burst into anger just as much as the sweet spring waters that swell into laughter, and the slow erosion of wounded tears as much as that of the soaring song. May these rafters hear the voices of the child as surely as that of the order and the sound of the lute, the clack of the typewriter, the swish of the broom, and know that all are holy as the shout of a million stars. May all those things and more be true. Pete's going to light our chalice while I read these simple words. And he lights the chalice, mindful of those who've worshiped in this space before, and then we invite them back. All those from all the generations of this fine place, way back in the early mid-1700s. We also invite the inspiration that sets the Buddhists on the path to nirvana, that same instinct that takes the freedom marchers to Selma and the pagans to the woods and the Christians to confess their faith in times of trouble. All are welcome here. We come to church ideally to train ourselves on how to live and to have a little fun, I suppose, too. Making coming together the act of is as holy an act and a practically important act, right? How we live is our main job. And how exciting and nerve-wracking is that? Especially when today's sort of a first date. Especially a first date when you've already sort of committed to one another. The fun of that is still a ways away, and I encourage you to stand as you are willing and able, or stand in spirit, if not in body, for our opening hymn number 121, We'll Build a Land. 121. You haven't figured it out yet. I can't sing. I love this prayer. This was Theodore Parker's installation, who's one of the many heroes we have in our movement. Theodore Parker was such a badass. He preached to 3,000 people at the Orpheum, which is the Orpheum Theater. That was his church for a while in Boston. And he was kind of rejected by the standing order for being a little bit too liberal, right? This was sort of just when Unitarianism was kind of coming out. And he preached with a gun in the pulpit, which is not timely to our moment today. But back then there was a fugitive slave law. So anyone they would capture slaves from churches, and he had a gun there to make sure no one got a fugitive slave. So that's a good little Theodore Parker story. This ingathering moment was taken in large from his sermon he preached at and had his installation 178 years ago in 1846, which is important because it's a full century after our church was brought to life by 10 inspired Westboro folks. Parker said in words that could have been written today, said the church that is to lead this century will not be a church creeping on all fours, face turned down, its eyes turned backwards. It must be full of the brave spirit of the day, keeping also of the good times in the past. This marvelous age, as never before, demands freedom for itself, usefulness in its institutions, truth in its teachings, and beauty in its deeds. Hi, Colin. If this church is true, many things which seem meaningful in the street, I love this part, house will be set down here as wrong. If there be a public ill in the land, if a lie invades the state, as we know it has, it is for the church to give the alarm. Is the church to say nothing, do nothing? Let us have a church for the whole person, truth for the mind, good works for the hands, love for the heart, a church which, like lightning in the clouds, shines brightest where elsewhere it is dark. I open this time of meditation with the request that we honor the rarity of what we are and what we are called to do. Let's just take a minute to think about that high call. It's now time for joys and concerns, a good UU tradition in almost every church. And I invite people to come forward and drop us. We think of the people in the Ukraine in particular. We think about the people in Gaza facing not only the pitfalls of everyday life, but all that. I know that there were car accidents, there's graduations, there's lost dogs, there's, you know, an infinite number of things. And let's take a moment to honor all the joys that remain unmentioned and all the concerns that fill our lives. Our prayer is, our sung prayer, our centering hymn is number 123, Spirit of Life. 1, 2, 3. That hymn was written by Carolyn McDade at a women's conference in 1980 or 81 with the goal of pulling us out of the sort of Christian hymnal to a degree and creating something that wasn't quite so theological. So we honor her for that. It's now time for the offertory, which generally in my world means a silly story. Keep it simple today. There's two options here. You can give for the serious one. So we pass this plate with the knowledge that many have died for the right to gather and worship freely. Think about all of that. So this offering is not only a pragmatic act of survival, it is also an essential act of religious independence, funding your own church. And then the lighthearted one is, if you fear change, I saw this on a tip jar. If you fear change, well, today may not be for you, but you can leave your fear right here. Here we are. Okay. And the split plate apparently goes to the ministerial discretionary fund, which is, I call Cancun. So there we are. Save me, Linda, save me. I should add some joys and concerns, but it's a good preface to this reading. But I just want to, I'll throw some stones in there from here for just, sitting around meeting people, Gordon and Jean and Linda and Celia and Stephanie, and just like in all churches, it's not about the minister. We come and go. Hopefully we'll stay. You get them for a long time and they're pretty good. But it's really about, and it's like the work. I mean, Jean cuts the lawn. And she's the treasurer. She needs a better press agent. I'll tell you that. Anyway, if you want to join in with me, I've changed the reading a little bit. We could, if you go to 728, this is kind of a celebration of the people who love on their churches. 728. I don't normally do so many responsive readings, but here we are. (728). Blessed are those who yearn for deepening more than escape, who are not afraid to grow in spirit. Blessed are those who bring their children, who invite their friends to come along to join in fellowship, learning, and growth. Yeah, start bringing your friends. Blessed are those who know that the church is often imperfect, yet rather than harbor feelings of anger or disappointment, they bring their concerns and needs to the attention of church leaders. We even accept those who do so begrudgingly, but that's just me. Blessed are those who speak their minds in meetings, who can take and give criticism, who keep alive their sense of humor. Blessed are they indeed. John Behrens, former UA president. Not going to have an anthem hymn. So I start my sermon. God bless you all. All right, here we go. I have a written copy of this if anybody wants one later. You may not, who knows. So we begin. So I came to think about what my first time in the pulpit should be, and I started with the idea that I was going to push the group, the worship committee, to pull the normal water communion service early. I thought it'd be kind of a nice theme. Not a bad idea in itself. A UUA water communion in gathering was the start of a new idea. And then I thought, that's kind of rude. I hadn't even got here and I'm altering the kind of ritual. So as I got started, I got nervous about what it'd be like to impose that wish on other people before I'd ever been here and muck with whatever tradition there was. I almost requested to do that, but then it just felt, then the water started to feel like a forced metaphor. And I was saying to a friend of mine on the phone, I said, you know, like I started out with the idea that there's going to be a water communion service, but it started to feel like the kind of trite conversation you have on a first date. And then it struck me, the better metaphor of the day is the first date part, which in a Sunday sense today kind of is. It's true, I've met most of you. I've been at the, you know, the coffee, what is the music, open mic nights. I realize I've sort of met most people here at once, but I realized that this is kind of a first date, particularly since I was worried about what I was going to wear and how I'd be perceived and will they like me? Will I like them? You know, all those kind of first date things were going on. So I thought inevitably what's going to fill the air is questions like, you know, will he fit in? That kind of stuff. So half the sermon is snippets of me way over disclosing, just like many first dates, on my half imagined conversation we might have. And then the other part is sort of me putting words in your mouth about what you want, terrible bad first date events, and then us dreaming about our future together. So there we go. So I'm going to pull down on my prop. This is our first date table. You're going to need some wine, I think. That wine's about 5 years old, by the way. So in my imagination, you asked me to tell me a little bit about myself. Well, that's an open-ended question, I say. Let's see. I was raised 30 miles from here in Lexington, Mass, in a Boston suburb my family could probably not afford to live in had we not landed there 30 years ago. I was raised on a busy street with 5 or 6 houses in a row. We're all family. It was farm turned into suburbs just before I was born. If that feels kind of incestuous that I grew up surrounded by aunts and uncles, it gets worse. I come from a family that are related to each other on multiple sides. My parents are cousins. Growing up like that, more than anything else I feel like I've ever experienced, is the kind of core of why I became a minister. Like it just, that kind of community, just jumping in, walking across, not knocking on doors is really kind of the core of it. In a way, I never left. I've traveled broadly. I've lived, and yet I live back in my old junior high that my grandfather and my mother went to school in. My brother and I went to school there. When I was young, I lived with my mother and 2 brothers. I'm the oldest. I saw and worked with my father. They got divorced when I was about 7. And really, I was raised in a kind of an old-fashioned way by an extended family that dominated half of the side of a street. minus the multiple driveways I had to shovel and the lawns I had to cut. It was a privileged way to grow up. Growing up in a family like that gave me a sense of importance. In high school, I was an average jockey, nice kid, mild-mannered. One day, my senior year, this was kind of one of my turns, my moments of realizing who I was, because we all have those. Midway through the football season, I'd missed yet one more tackle on the great running back we had. And I was lying flat on my back, looking up through to the sky, and the coach came over and he hovered over me. He said, "Wilson, why can't you hit anybody anymore?" And I said, "Coach, I don't want to hit anybody anymore. Except for Trump, maybe. I'd like to catch him the wrong way on a crossing pattern." I went to a liberal arts college in upstate New York. I went immediately after that to divinity school. I was in grad school for most of my 20s. I have in that time lived in New Hampshire, Boston proper, Chicago, Australia for a bit, 5 years in LA, but I'm really a New Englander. Served churches all over here. Lexington was always a place I returned to. I was a corporate communications undergrad at Ithaca. I raised my hand and asked, realizing at this point that I had made the wrong choice, what Marx would think of that corporate marketing strategy. Too late to change majors. I was off to divinity school. In my 20s, I worked with people with different cognitive challenges and was in divinity school, lived with a woman who's a big political operative in New Hampshire. Spent about 25 years working in the human services in one way or another. I'm 57. I've never been married. I don't have kids. Why, you ask? Oh, kind of you. Probably my early desire not to have kids was being a divorced kid, cautious about commitment, kind of a Yankee puritanical family. That divorced really affected that kind of liberation you get when you're young. Also, having so many evenings and weekends sucked up by church doesn't help either. I never really thought that marriage or kids was part of what was a high on my priority list. Let's see, you want more? Oh, more about the ministry. Okay, there we go. Okay, all right. Well, let's see. Sorry for oversharing. Maybe that doesn't matter much. Maybe it does. I don't know. I've been a minister for about 20 years. 21, I think, is the number. I've served 5 or 6 different churches. None of them did it not hurt to leave. I think it hurt them to lose me too, generally is the trend. Church and I are a pretty good mix. In the same breath, I'd also say I'm not that religious, probably like you. I grew up with a glow-in-the-dark picture of Jesus near my bed. I grew up an Episcopalian. I was an acolyte. That picture scared, protected me off to sleep. Probably lives in the back corners of my life. I'm kind of a Jesus fan. I'm not much of a theist. I don't really believe in that God of reward or fear or judgment anymore, at least probably not overtly. I'm pretty secular. I would call myself an ethical humanist to pin myself somewhere. But even though I have lost most of the traditional standards of religion, I still sort of feel like I'm one of God's servants. I feel like I'm called to do something. I do think that's a product of my imagination, but I'm sticking with it. It's about the strongest thing I got. And I do feel like I'm here to do something, and I feel like probably all of us Unitarians, that's probably the last kernel of stuff we hold on to more than much of anything else. That lack of faith hasn't changed my sense of duty. It really hasn't. I'm also pretty playful. You might have picked up on that. I'm pretty casual. Inside me is this impish trickster that wants to sneak up to Joel Osteen's house dressed like Jesus and smash his pumpkin. But I do know is that even if I'm confident that the God of the Bible is a mix of myth and history, as we all kind of come to know it is, we also don't know what's going on, right? At a cosmic level, at a deep level, where we should be humble about what doesn't exist, even if the traditional sources of what does may not inform us like they used to. I guess that makes me a concerned agnostic or an indifferent atheist, something in there. I know that I've been better with questions like probably all of you have than answers, and that's why we're all UUs, I think. I still think that what we think about life and why you come to church matters. I just do. I think it matters a lot in an almost magical way. Theologically and intellectually, I'm a bit of a dilettante. I know a lot about Christianity. I went to BU, which is a Christian seminary, Methodist. I know a fair bit about Judaism and a little bit less about the world religions, but I still know a decent amount. If I have a gift and I'm only moderately talented at almost about anything, I like to think I'm good at presenting things in interesting ways. I can distill down, as someone who is a dilettante, I can find the interesting stuff in most things. And I know generally when I'm preaching, I think that my ADHD brain, if it finds it still entertaining after this 5th or 5th or 6th edit, it's probably pretty good. As a preacher, I'm probably a little too academic and content driven for even my own taste. And I think that that generally gravitates that way for us. I want this experience of Sunday to be a mix of learning and feeling, right? I want it, the fairest say, to create an experience that's more primal and earthy than even I think I know how. I want to tell you that I rage against injustice. Linda and I have done some social justice stuff together. Pete and I have done some stuff together, but really that would be to give myself too much credit. I don't like injustice or oppression any more than anybody else, but I also suffer from the potential that comes from being complacent, like probably a lot of us do. I'm just right there with you. I see my part of my mission in life to challenge that and to challenge us collectively, kind of as one. I suffer from the paralysis of analysis. It's very comfortable for me to sit and think about something. Comfort of going along. I'm not much for conflict. I'll probably put up with more conflict, more dysfunction than they would encourage you in the modern ministry training to put up with, but not for too long. I'm generally a much bigger fan of parishioners than I am of ministers. I hold a deep respect to the point of wonder why so many people give up so much of their life to do this, and I deeply respect that. Let's see, what I know about you more personally. I get this feeling you're ready to move forward, just really move forward. And I encourage that. I think that's great. And I hope that it's a flourishing age for the church and we can put a few more people in the seats and we can be happy and we can be settled. Too many ministerial transitions, too many interims, too many, right? From Judith to now, it's been like too much of a mix, not to put anyone, to blame anybody, too many people. I know you're loyal, that I know. People are loyal to a place and I can merge right into that lane. I fall in love with churches too. I know you're not as strong and big as you were 20 years ago. And I don't know if it's comforting or scary, but you should just know, as you probably vaguely do, that that's an experience across churches. That's not just you. You're right in the sweep of things. I don't know how much bigger we'll get. I don't know how fast that will happen. But I think that better days are ahead for all of us. I do. And times at least when you don't feel like there's a transition at work all the time. I hope I can nurture that. I hope we can sort of set that underfoot. I feel like there's a little bit of the Wright brothers in this room. That image just came to me and it's like there's a little bit of like you're anxious to get the plane out of the shop and up in the air. I dig that. Churches need ministers that stay a while. That's when the churchy thing works at its best. I intend on staying here for at least 3 years, and then probably I would guess somewhere 6 to 8 is sort of my sense of when it's time for me to move on. That's just, who knows? Maybe 100, who knows? There's a little blurry territory in all small churches where people who do a role have control over that role, right? That they've earned that desert. And then that also comes into conflict with the role they perform for the church. That tends to be an issue in smaller churches in general. How much freedom does any individual have to do the thing that they do in their own way? How bureaucratic we should be, how independent it should be is kind of always up for conversation. I understand that, I think, deeply. Church is always a mix of controlling what volunteers do and giving them the freedom to do that. We'll figure that out, and I think you probably already, to some degree, have. I can be kind of cuddly pragmatic. I can be a little bit coarse sometimes, but I generally speak with love. I don't really like conflict that much, so I have a little bit of a laissez-faire approach. But like I said, there's a limit. I believe it's your church. And although it's not vogue to say this, I tend to think that the opinions of those that contribute the most and the people who've been here the longest bear the most weight. I will over-listen to some people more than others. At the same time, we need to draw other people in here, and I think we all know that. I hope we can nurture that connection between the intimacy of the people who are really insiders and opening those doors to other people, which we know everyone in this room agrees we need. To me, though, loyalty and commitment matters. You don't have to agree with that. I also hear that it'd be great to have some kids around. Church should involve kids. Ideally, we should be having some of these living, raucous, cute, disruptive, adorable reasons to add back a children's moment into the service. And soon after that, build out a little RE program. However, until that fate befalls us, we actually should feel free to focus on adult programming. And that should be something that we can exploit when there are no kids. Take that as a moment of liberty that we can be just adults for a while with the hope that their kids infiltrate and we will jump to life to meet that need. I also believe that churches that are first parishes and Universalist Unitarian churches have an interesting double pillar kind of responsibility, right? We have a responsibility of being the first church in town, and that comes with a certain amount of obligations to and responsibilities and privileges to be the center of town. So I think we should try to build that out as much as possible. I know we're the end of a parade, but as UUs, we also have to be the progressive wing. And I hope that those two pillars can guide us. Being the central part of the church community in town and being the liberal wing. That's a tough act, but it's true. I feel like this church is in a little bit like where the Patriots, the football team, is. Two institutions have a new quarterback they're hopeful about, and they still feel like the beginning of a new path is available. Like I said, I'm impressed with the work that I see people on the board and others just jumping in to do. Excited about the new art center. Being a minister is a weird mix of having a job and having an identity and a calling. I don't really know how to do anything else, but that's what it is. It's a weird combination. And I lean in the direction of seeing what I do as more personal than professional. I'm not that professional, but I do feel a very personal connection to the responsibility of being a minister. Just how I go. I'm grateful to stand before you in this old role. Like it's meaningful to me. And I feel like I know how to serve a congregation, particularly in a part-time way. Like I think I can do that. There is a job that puts more potential tasks on your list than hours to do them, but I know that you will heal me and that we will be I'll be transformed by the love of this group, and I will hope to deliver the same back to you. I think my relationship with congregations and churches is about my favorite kind of relationship. Here's my wish list. I'm hoping that we can take our work seriously. It deserves it. I hope we can have a lot of fun doing it. Hell, we have the liberty of not being the Vatican. Very few people outside these walls care what goes on here, so we can create our future together. That energy and freedom is a gift. You don't walk into Copley Square Episcopal Church with that freedom. We have that freedom. I want Sundays to be a combination of taking off our brains long enough to live into the harmony with, we'll call it the divine, for lack of a better phrase, and also the something to chew our brains on, right? I know you like to chew your brains on things and feel exercised enough to do that. And even if we're a non-creedal religious tradition, I hope we get to live out that sense of what it is to be a sacred community and that we feel that. I want to claim that the difference between what we want to be and who we are is from this moment on the perfect distance apart. Does that make sense? It's the perfect distance from where we are to who we want to be. And we'll work our way in that direction as a sacred calling. We'll listen carefully to one another, hopefully, to our own hearts and the broader community. So those three voices I'm going to kind of commission us to listen to. Listen to the voice of your spirit. Listen to that of the rest of the community. And the voice that's outside the doors of what we can be of service to them. What do they need? It's a nice thing that you can't afford to buy the growth and connection that comes with a community of church. You can't buy it. I love that. You got to earn it. So I commissioned us to freely think about all that and to think about what the progressive liberal religious seekers that live within, say, 8 miles of here that are not in a church might need. I want us to mentally just put a point here, draw a circle. What's our ground to work in, to serve, right? Ask ourselves how we can serve that group, how we can do that in a loving way together. Doesn't exactly matter what we do, really doesn't. But if we're creative and we listen and we're persistent and we're patient, we can be closer to who we want to be and celebrate who we are. All at once. I was up, when I started to write this up, watching YouTube, and I fell into, as you probably have, fell into a hole. And it showed a series of America's old favorite advertisements. Why I landed there, I don't know. I know what algorithm dragged me to that spot. But an old MasterCard commercial came up and it grabbed my attention. It had a father and a son at a ballpark, and over the images of them sitting there together, you know, the little kid with the two big baseball hat on, you hear this voiceover saying something like this: hot dog and a Coke at the ballpark, $9. This was a while ago. New ball cap, $15. Taking the starting shortstop to the hometown Little League game to his first big ball game, priceless. I haven't been able to shake that throwback image, and I'm touched by that. So here's my version of that ad. Attendance at a committee meeting, 2 precious, moderately frustrating evening hours. Making brownies for the monthly open mic night, $7 worth of groceries and an hour in the kitchen. Having a community of local fellow searchers who share my values, are committed to personal growth and the collective effort to make a contribution to make this society better in a historic place we call our own, priceless. This year, may we appreciate our value and have the courage and wisdom and love to grow slowly closer to who we want to be. Amen. What next? Comments? You want to do a little passing of the mic? Let's do that. Spontaneously. Here we go. Not too long.
I like to think of myself as a big thinker, and it's never occurred to me that first parish means we were the first parish in town.
We're going to bring Ann along a little slower than the rest of you. Comment? Oh, yeah, we go.
I didn't miss the Cancun remark, but you need to bring people with you.
Never been to Cancun. Okay. Oh. Miss somebody.
I think that we've been here maybe the longest. Karen, yeah, no. So, and in all that time, I've had a lot of different roles in the church, but this is the first year where I'm going to work with the worship committee and lead a service based on a Living by Heart program that's been started a long time ago. And it feels like part of the connection can be completed that way.
There we go. All right, thanks. Oh, I got my Donahue moment here.
First, I was not one of the people that you've met before because I was probably out of the country when you had some of your earlier activities here. But I was very much looking forward to this morning's service, to get a chance to meet you, to see some of my friends that have been missing for a couple of months here. And all I want to say is welcome. I am really, really, really glad you're here. I really enjoyed your first sermon and you bringing some humor into all of this. I do think we need to have some fun, but thank you.
If we're not having fun, we're doing it wrong.
We have a big property and it's weighing me heavy right now. Our property.
The church or you personally? Okay, yeah, well, we've got a lot of land. Thank you. Okay. We are, yeah, sure. Ministerial discretionary fund will cover that. I invite you to stand in spirit, if not in body, for our closing hymn number 170. We are a gentle, angry people. Singing for. Our closing words come from Jacob Trapp, called To Worship. To worship is to stand in awe under a heaven of stars. To worship is to be silent and receptive before a tree astir with the wind. To worship is to work with dedication and skill. To worship is to sing for the beauty of the earth. Worship spouts from a loneliness seeking communion. Worship is kindred fire within our hearts. Take the love, community, and inspiration you have found here and go be it.